The Vert Wheeler name has existed for 17 years now, and in that time period, we've seen many different versions of the character. Each incarnation of the character usually shows up when Hot Wheels wants to reuse a trademark or to keep our little community going. Each different version of Vert is set in a different universe, with a common factor between each universe being Vert himself. Now this begs the question, why does Vert keep showing up in different universes? Or more importantly, how are the different versions connected? In this video, I will explain my theory on how every version of Vert is the same character. But to do that, we have to go back to the beginning of the story. It all started in 1969 when Hot Wheels released a series of cartoons to advertise their toys. The series itself isn't really anything special on its own, but when you consider the name of the main character, whose name is Jack the Rabbit Wheeler, the first piece of the puzzle starts to line up. Jeff Gomez, the godfather of the Highway 35 universe, hosted an Ask Me Anything on Reddit in 2018. In this AMA, he answered a few vital questions to support the first part of this theory. Jack the Rabbit Wheeler is the father of Jack Wheeler, who is the father of Vert Wheeler, which means that the original cartoon from 1969 and the Highway 35 movie are in the same universe. Alongside this fact, Jack Sr. drove the car, the Jack Rabbit Special, which was sold to a collector after his passing. This collector eventually sold it off to a company in 2002. The company rebuilt the car as a resto mod in 2004. This company was known as the Fatbacks Enterprises, and they used the newly restored Jack Rabbit Special as their poster child. During the time they had the car, Jack Jr. and Vert were living in the suburbs, and they had just finished celebrating Vert's 16th birthday. Later in the same day, Vert was recruited to the world race by Dr. Tesla. Not long later, Vert won the world race and had to put the fabled Wheel of Power back in its resting place, and life returned back to normal. A year later, after the world race, Vert was given the opportunity to race using his grandfather's car in the Fatbacks Land Speed Record competition. A year later, he was recruited by the racing gang called the Teku, who provided him with new modifications for his Diora 2 and supplied him with plenty of racers to go up against. During one of the races on the coast, the Teku and their rival gang called the Metal Maniacs were recruited to race for Dr. Tesla one more time. This time, to race to save the world, rather than to race for their own glory. The gangs had no choice but to accept and race in these newly discovered racing realms, and, well, we all know what happens there, so I'll skip to the end of the ultimate race. The Teku and the Metal Maniacs have forged new bonds after performing a life-threatening mission to save Mark Wilde, and Vert was left alone in the Silencers headquarters, which was previously known as the Scrim Corporation headquarters. One of the personnel approached him and removed his helmet to reveal Jack Jr. He was racing for the Silencers the entire time. That's the recap for the original timeline of the Highway 35 universe. Now, we're going to get to the juicy bits of the theory. As we all know, there have been 4 iterations of the Vert Wheeler character: Highway 35, AcceleRacers, Battle Force 5, and the recent addition to the lineup, the mobile game called Infinite Loop. Each one of these franchises includes a different version of Vert. They always seem to be the same character, but slightly different to fit the setting that they're in. This practice of reusing characters is common in toy line related material such as Transformers, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, and basically any kids show that gets a modern reboot. And just like Optimus Prime, there are multiple Vert Wheelers in their own isolated timelines. This fact is proven by 2 main pieces of evidence. The first being the World Race movie versus the World Race comic. They're vastly different and don't share a single continuity piece outside the final scene from the World Race movie. The second piece of evidence is in an episode of Battle Force 5, where the Battle Force 5 meet evil versions of themselves from another timeline. But what event caused the timeline to split multiple times? That's the question I'm going to answer. The full story for the next segment is in the description. After the world race, Vert was given a choice by an Acceleron: save the world and his friends by sacrificing his memories to the Wheel of Power, or do nothing. Vert opted to sacrifice his memories. The Wheel of Power accepted those memories and created separate timelines where key events were changed based on those memories. There are only 4 timelines that we know of at this current point in time. There is the AcceleRacers Season 2 timeline, which would have included mechs and early ideas from Battle Force 5. This was made canon by official patents, promotional material from Comic-Con, and German magazines. I've compiled a small document which is my approximation of what the story would have been had it made to production. The second timeline is the World Race plus AcceleRacers collectible card game timeline, which is considered by fans as the original canon of the series before things were inevitably changed during production of each franchise. The third timeline is the Battle Force 5 timeline, and more on that later. And the fourth timeline is the Infinite Loop timeline. I will now give a full-depth analysis of each timeline. In the first timeline, the Season 2 timeline, the memory wipe of Vert never happened. Instead, the Teku and the Maniacs successfully completed their search for Vert, where they located the Silencers' headquarters, where they were then detained and recruited to fight the drones. The full first chapter for this timeline is in the description. In the second timeline, several pieces of information were changed, such as the Scorcher's team member being a spy for Galorum, or the larger number of racing realms in the card game. It's safe to assume that this timeline would have lasted a lot longer than the original timeline. The third timeline makes major changes to the events of World Race. In this universe, Jack Wheeler didn't have to leave on Vert's birthday. Because of this, he was able to take Vert to the DMV to get his license and successfully bonded with his son. When they returned home though, there wasn't a Diora 2 waiting for them. The World Race wouldn't happen for a few days until after Vert's birthday. While Vert was at the summer surf camp, Jack was the one participating in the World Race in his place. These changes to the timeline rapidly changed how Vert would mature and what direction he would take as a racer. Instead of becoming a conceited brat who thought that he was the best driver in the world, he became a thoughtful team leader for the local skate team. Not long after he and his team conquered the competition of the well-renowned XV Extreme Games, Vert retired from skateboarding and traveled out to the Salt Flats where he would hone his tuning and racing skills. On his initial test, he decided to have some fun with a tornado. This event is the catalyst for Vert Wheeler to become the Crimson One, and that's the start of the Battle Force 5 timeline. In the fourth and final canon timeline so far, Vert won the world race but didn't have the opportunity to put the Wheel of Power back on its resting place. Instead, his Diora 2 was cut in half by Galorum's laser, and when everything seemed lost, Kurt Wilde showed up in his slingshot to have the final battle with Galorum. This fight ended with Kurt's victory and Galorum's deactivation. With the drone leader defeated, the other drones had no choice but to deactivate as well. Without the opposing armada of homicidal robots, there was no reason to put the wheel back in its resting place. Vert and the other drivers returned home and gave it back to Tesla. After years of research, Tesla finally figured out how to harness the power of the wheel safely, while also figuring out how to remotely open multiple new dimensions known as realms and legs of the world race. With all the secrets unlocked, the Scrim Corporation changed from a secretive company searching for alien answers to a car manufacturer under Peter Tesla, who had discovered a new love for car design and speed. With all the advancements the Scrim Corporation cars had made, all the competing car companies had no choice but to accept defeat and allow the new era of race cars to rule the streets. This allowed new designers to join the game and create their own mass-produced cars under Scrim, Diora 2, Power Age, Hollowback, and many more. Because of these advancements in technology, normal racing like F1 and NASCAR weren't as popular and had to shut down. But that wasn't the end for official racing. A new era of racing started where entire cities were converted to have tracks made with Acceleron technology, thus starting the Infinite Loop Championship. Scrim created new types of currency to accommodate racers for their wins and charge those for their losses. To keep everything in line, they created a special police force called the Silencers, which oversaw every transaction of currency, parts, cars, and many other transactions. Racing gangs like the Teku and the Maniacs finally had a place to let loose legally. Vert, though, he wouldn't get to see these advancements. He had an accident in 2007 during a race in Japan. This accident put him in a coma. They were able to keep him alive until his wounds had healed, but they estimated that he wouldn't wake up for 50 years. So they put him in an Acceleron freezing chamber, which would halt his aging until he woke up. In the year 2067, Vert woke up from his coma, only to learn that all his friends and family had already passed away. It took time to process, but eventually, Vert overcame his grief and started racing again. He won 3 Infinite Loop Championships, and with those earnings from winning, Vert bought back all the cars of his friends, or at least the ones that weren't crashed or rotting. He also found his UR2, which he promptly restored. In the year 2075, a young boy by the name Tone Passaro joined the Infinite Loop Racing League. He was the grandson of Nolo Passaro. Vert took him under his wing and set him on the right track to become an Infinite Loop champion. And that's the end of the final timeline so far. There are many other timelines that we have yet to see, some of which are official and some of which are fan-made. It's all based on a love for Hot Wheels. So even if people knock you for your stories, or if they hate a car that you like, always remember that wisdom is a circle. What you receive, you must give back. So we'll do as we always do. Expand on what we know, theorize what we don't know, and keep the Wheeler name alive. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this lengthy theory video. Took a while to make, and I regret to say that I will not be posting Hot Wheels content nearly as much as I used to. I've always wanted to make car restoration videos, so that's the direction I'll be taking the channel in the future. But don't worry, this isn't the last Hot Wheels video that I'll make, so I hope that you all will stick with me in my journey of cars and Hot Wheels. And for one more time, I'm signing off. Until next time.